Picture this. You're watching one of the scariest movies ever made, and suddenly you spot something that makes you question everything you just saw. What if I told you that in the movie Jaws, there's a scene that's completely real, but it was never supposed to make it to theaters? What if I told you that what you're seeing on screen actually happened, and it was so shocking that people fainted when they first watched it? Today, we're diving deep into one of Hollywood's most carefully hidden secrets. We're talking about a scene in Jaws that Steven Spielberg tried to bury for decades, a moment so intense that it changed how movies were made forever. This isn't about special effects or movie magic. This is about something real that happened on July 15th, 1974, and a photograph that proved everything. Let me take you back to 1974. Steven Spielberg was just 26 years old, practically a kid by Hollywood standards. He had only made one big movie before this, and now he was standing on the beaches of Martha's Vineyard, about to create something that would terrify audiences around the world. But what happened during filming was scarier than anything he had planned. The story starts with two producers who found a book that would change everything. Richard Zanuck and David Brown were flipping through a magazine when they saw a tiny description of an unpublished novel called Jaws. The description was short, just a few lines, but it ended with 4 words that caught their attention. Might make a good movie. Those 4 words were enough. The producers read the entire book in one night and couldn't stop talking about it the next morning. They thought it was the most exciting story they had ever read. Without waiting, they decided to buy the movie rights. Later, Brown admitted they moved too fast. If they had read the book twice, they might have realized how impossible it would be to turn into a film. Universal Pictures agreed to back them and paid $175,000 for the rights before the book was even published. That's over $1 million in today's money. It was a huge gamble. All they had was a promising story and 2 excited producers. But the timing worked perfectly. When the book came out in February 1974, it became a massive hit, staying on bestseller lists for almost a year. Now came the hard part, finding someone to direct it. Steven Spielberg had just finished another movie and was already under contract with Universal. But here's the shocking part. He didn't want to do Jaws. He was worried it would trap him as the shark guy for the rest of his career. A few years earlier, he had made a movie called Duel about a man being hunted by a truck. He was afraid people would only see him as someone who made movies about things chasing people. He tried to leave. He even looked at other films he could make instead. But Universal wouldn't let him go. They knew what he could do, so they forced him to stay. Little did anyone know that this decision would create one of the most famous movies in history. The casting was a complete mess. Spielberg wanted different actors, but many of them said no. Richard Dreyfuss, who played Hooper, called Spielberg out of the blue and said he wanted the role. For Quint, the gruff shark hunter, Spielberg wanted big-name actors like Lee Marvin, but they all turned him down. That's how Robert Shaw got the part, and he absolutely nailed it. But here's where things get interesting. On set, Shaw and Dreyfuss couldn't stand each other. Shaw was an old-school, serious actor who drank too much. Dreyfuss was younger, more nervous, and full of energy. Shaw would insult him constantly, calling him names and making fun of his acting. Once, he even grabbed Dreyfuss by the throat. Another time, he shot a fire extinguisher at him during filming. Shaw's drinking became a huge problem. One night, he got so drunk that he couldn't film his most important scene, the famous speech about the USS Indianapolis. He begged Spielberg for another chance the next day. When he was sober, Shaw delivered that speech in one perfect take. It became one of the most memorable moments in movie history. Everything about the filming was rushed. Universal wanted to ride the wave of the book's success, so they pushed the movie forward quickly. Spielberg started shooting on May 2nd, 1974, but the script wasn't even finished. The mechanical sharks they built didn't work properly. The budget exploded from $3.5 million to $9 million. The schedule stretched from 55 days to 159 days of filming. Spielberg, still only 26 years old, felt incredible pressure. He was scared his career would be over before it really started. But producer David Brown talked him through it, promising that if he finished Jaws, he could make any movie he wanted afterward. That promise kept him going through the nightmare of filming. Here's something most people don't know. Spielberg didn't want Jaws to be just a horror movie. He wanted it to have real people, real emotions, and even moments of humor. To help with this, he brought in a comedy writer named Carl Gottlieb who had worked on TV shows like The Odd Couple. Gottlieb was supposed to help for just 1 week, but he ended up staying for 9 weeks. Every night, he had dinner with Spielberg and the actors, and they would talk about what scenes to shoot next. Many of the movie's most famous lines came out of these dinners. The famous line, "You're going to need a bigger boat," wasn't even in the original script. It was made up on the spot during filming. One of Gottlieb's biggest changes was cutting out a love affair from the book. In the novel, Chief Brody's wife has a romantic relationship with Hooper, but when Gottlieb saw the actors together, he knew it wouldn't work on screen. He said there was no way they were going to show the wife cheating on Brody with this guy, so the entire subplot disappeared. On May 2nd, 1974, Spielberg made a decision that everyone said was crazy. Instead of filming the water scenes in a safe studio tank, he chose to film Jaws in the real ocean. Everyone warned him not to do it. Studios hated the idea because it was expensive and unpredictable. But Spielberg believed that only real water, real skies, and real movement would make the movie feel alive. The team picked Martha's Vineyard as their location. It looked calm and beautiful, but it turned into a nightmare to film in. To make the mechanical shark work, they needed water that was deep enough for it to swim, but shallow enough to anchor their equipment. They found a strange spot 10 to 12 miles offshore that was only 30 feet deep. Spielberg later called it the worst place in the world to shoot a movie. Nature didn't care about their movie schedule. The ocean changed its mood every hour. One moment, everything would be perfect for filming. The next moment, the current would shift and push all their boats out of position. The crew had to stop everything and reset the entire setup. By then, the sun had moved, and their shots were ruined. Some days, they got only 2 usable takes. The cast and crew were miserable. The sun burned their skin. The rocking waves made them seasick. Everyone was exhausted and frustrated. Even the local people got angry. At first, they were excited to see Hollywood in their town, but as the delays stretched on, their patience ran out. One night, someone even threw fish guts at Spielberg's rented house. Then there were the mechanical sharks, nicknamed Bruce after Spielberg's lawyer. The production team built 3 of them, each about 25 feet long. Spielberg had hoped these mechanical sharks would save the movie. Instead, they nearly destroyed it. The very first time they lowered one of the sharks into the ocean, it sank straight to the bottom. Divers had to swim down and fish it out. From there, things only got worse. The salt water corroded all the machinery inside. The rubber skin soaked up water and became warped and heavy. The movements became jerky and unrealistic. One day, the shark would look terrifying and menacing. The next day, it would look like a broken toy that a kid had left in the bathtub. Spielberg was furious. At one point, he shouted, "I'd like to kill this stupid shark." The crew spent hours every day repairing mechanical beasts. Some days, they couldn't shoot anything at all because pieces kept falling off. Sometimes, entire sharks would disappear below the waves and had to be pulled back up by divers. Everyone started to panic. The budget was exploding way beyond what they had planned. The movie was supposed to cost $3.5 million and be finished in 55 days. 2 months into filming, they were already $2 million over budget and 49 days behind schedule. Shooting didn't finally stop until October 6th. That was day 159 of what was supposed to be a 55-day shoot. The final budget landed somewhere between $9 and $12 million. Spielberg was convinced his career was over before it had really started. Studio executives were terrified they had wasted all this money on a disaster. Crew members started making fun of the whole production. Some wore T-shirts that said, "Shark 1, Spielberg 0. Others started calling the movie flaws instead of Jaws. Spielberg was so scared that the angry crew might throw him into the ocean on the final day of filming that he secretly snuck off the set and flew back to Los Angeles early. He didn't even say goodbye to most of the people he had worked with for months. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because the mechanical shark barely worked, Spielberg had to get creative. He made a decision that changed movie history forever. He stopped trying to show the shark all the time. Instead, he just hinted at it. He used underwater shots from the shark's point of view. He showed yellow barrels floating on the surface. He let the audience hear the shark before they ever saw it. That's where composer John Williams came in and created magic. Williams wrote a simple two-note theme, just two notes, E and F, repeating over and over. When Spielberg first heard it, he actually laughed. He thought Williams was joking with him, but Williams explained that it was meant to feel primitive and scary, like a heartbeat in the water. Williams recorded 47 different versions of that simple theme. Each version was designed to control exactly how scared the audience would feel. Sometimes it was slow and quiet, building tension. Other times, it pounded fast and loud, making people's hearts race. The shark only appears on screen for about 4 minutes in the entire movie, but that's all it needed. The mystery made it absolutely terrifying. When the shark finally burst out of the water near the end of the movie, it was shocking because the audience had been waiting and imagining for over an hour. The build-up had worked perfectly. The broken machines had forced Spielberg to make something much smarter and scarier than he had originally planned. Now, let's talk about the scene that was too shocking for theaters. The original death scene of a young boy named Alex Kintner was supposed to be unforgettable, terrifying, and painfully realistic. On July 15, 1974, the crew gathered at a beach in Martha's Vineyard to film what they thought would be the scariest moment in the entire movie. The scene was planned to show a great white shark attacking the young boy on his raft in full, gory detail. 11-year-old Jeffrey Voorhees played Alex Kintner, and in the original plan, he was going to be floating calmly on a yellow raft, completely unaware of the massive danger swimming right beneath him. Suddenly, the huge mechanical shark, all 25 feet long and weighing over 1,500 pounds, would rise out of the water and lunge toward him with incredible force. The shark needed a crew of 15 people just to operate it properly. They had designed it to leap with such power that it would soak the camera crew with seawater every single time it burst from the water. The raft was supposed to be crushed completely in the shark's massive mouth with Alex still on it. The mechanical shark would thrash violently from side to side, throwing gallons of fake blood high into the air and turning the sea bright red. The crew had prepared an entire system of pressurized blood packs that would explode on cue, sending red liquid shooting everywhere. To make the scene even more disturbing and realistic, they had built a lifelike dummy of Alex. This wasn't just a simple mannequin. It had movable arms and legs, a torso filled with fake organs, and was specifically designed to tear apart like a real human body. The mechanical shark was programmed to rip through it brutally. The plan was horrifying. Limbs would separate and float in the water. Pieces of fake flesh would bob to the surface, and artificial organs would scatter everywhere. The screams were designed to be sharp and terrifying, and the sound team had prepared layers of bone-cracking and tissue-ripping sounds to make it even worse. It was designed to be pure nightmare fuel. But here's the incredible part. One photograph captured this moment before the carnage, and it wasn't released to the public for decades. In 2018, a rare black and white photograph taken by a set photographer surfaced after being hidden for over 40 years. The photo was dated July 15, 1974, at exactly 2:37 p.m. The image shows a mechanical shark with its jaws wide open, just inches away from the dummy on the raft. The shark's massive head fills the entire frame, and the small figure of the dummy seems frozen in terror. Even without color, the photograph looked absolutely terrifying. You could see the shark's rough skin, its cold and glassy fake eyes, and endless rows of sharp teeth. The dummy's arms were stretched out as if trying to protect itself from certain death. The photograph was haunting and disturbing, even as just a still image. It came from the private collection of a crew member who had worked on the second filming unit. The photo was discovered years later, tucked away in a box of forgotten movie memorabilia that had been stored in someone's garage. When film experts finally saw this photograph, they immediately recognized how important it was. This wasn't just another behind-the-scenes production photo. It was a glimpse into the most graphic and violent idea that Spielberg had planned but never used. The photo proved exactly how far the special effects team had been willing to go to shock and terrify audiences. The The mechanical shark in the photo looked incredibly realistic and menacing. Bob Matty and his special effects crew had spent months perfecting that monster, and they had succeeded in creating something that looked like it could actually kill someone. But the scene never made it to movie theaters, and here's why. On April 26, 1975, Universal Pictures held a test screening in Dallas, Texas, to see how audiences would react to the movie. What happened that night changed everything. When the original Alex Kintner death scene played on the big screen, the audience couldn't handle it. 13 people actually fainted and had to be helped out of the theater. 2 people vomited in the lobby. Some people ran out of the theater completely and refused to come back in. The reaction was so intense that it scared the studio executives. The scene was simply too brutal and realistic for the movie's PG rating. The Motion Picture Association said that if Universal wanted to keep that scene in the movie, they would have to change the rating to R, which would mean that children couldn't see it without their parents. Universal Pictures didn't want that restriction because it would limit ticket sales and hurt their profits. They told Spielberg that he had to cut the scene completely. Surprisingly, Spielberg agreed with their decision. He later said that he had learned something important. People's imagination could scare them much more than showing them actual blood and violence. He realized that leaving things unseen and letting the audience's mind fill in the details made the movie much more terrifying. He didn't want to show everything right away. Instead, he wanted the audience to feel the presence of the shark and fear it before they ever actually saw it clearly. But not everyone was happy with this decision. Bob Matty, who had built the mechanical shark and spent weeks preparing the original brutal scene, was frustrated and disappointed. He felt that his team's best and most realistic work had been hidden from the world. He believed the scene showed the true horror of what a real shark attack would look like. And he wasn't wrong. The mechanical shark did look incredibly real and move like a genuine predator. It tore through its fake prey like it meant business. But Spielberg made another choice that sealed the scene's fate forever. He decided that he didn't want to reveal the shark so early in the movie. He wanted to keep it hidden and mysterious for as long as possible. This decision helped build incredible suspense throughout the film. It also helped cover up the technical problems with the mechanical shark, which broke down constantly and caused expensive delays. By cutting the shark's early appearance, Spielberg made sure that when it finally showed up on screen, it would have maximum impact on the audience. The version of Alex Kintner's death that we see in the final movie is completely different from what was originally planned. Instead of showing the actual attack, it relies on people's reactions. It shows panic and chaos. It shows the water turning red with blood, but it doesn't show the shark or the attack itself. This choice worked brilliantly, and people still say it's one of the scariest moments in movie history. Not because of what they saw, but because of what they imagined. There was also another scene filmed at a quiet pond where kids were playing with toy boats. Chief Brody's son Michael was there too, and everything seemed safe and peaceful. Then, without warning, a 25-foot great white shark slipped into the calm water. This wasn't the dangerous open ocean. It was supposed to be a safe place for children. Boats flipped over, kids screamed, and the water exploded with panic and terror. For the first time in the movie, Spielberg filmed the scene in bright daylight instead of darkness. Everyone could see exactly what was happening, which made it feel more real and more frightening. The camera switched between wide shots showing the entire pond and close-up shots showing the fear on people's faces. You could see helpless people try to run through the water, which was slow and clumsy. John Williams' music started quietly and then grew louder and more intense as the fear built up second by second. Then came the shark attack, and it was fast and massive. For the first time in the entire movie, the audience saw more than just a fin sticking out of the water. There was a glimpse of the shark's full body, but only for a moment. Spielberg had waited over an hour into the movie to show it, and that delay made the moment explode with power and terror. Originally, Spielberg had planned even more violence for this scene. Right after the pond chaos, there was supposed to be another brutal attack that was filmed but then cut from the final movie. A man in a small paddle boat saw the children in trouble and paddled toward them, trying to help and rescue them. That heroic decision cost him his life. The scene was filmed on August 26, 1974, with a stuntman playing the helpful man. The mechanical shark rose from below the surface, slammed into the small boat with tremendous force, and grabbed the man in its massive mouth. His body hung out of the shark's jaws like a twisted decoration. But it got even worse. The man didn't die immediately. He was still conscious and alive. The shark dragged him through the water as blood poured from his mouth. The water around him turned bright red, and the camera stayed focused on him for a full 10 seconds while he suffered. Michael Brody, just a young boy, watched this horrible scene happen from only a few feet away. Spielberg filmed the entire brutal sequence, and it was absolutely horrifying to watch. But even for a director making a scary movie about a killer shark, it was simply too much. He decided to cut it because it didn't match the tone of the rest of the film. Jaws was supposed to build fear slowly and steadily, but this scene hit the audience like a hammer blow. Spielberg wanted to create tension and suspense, not just shock people for the sake of being shocking. But the footage still exists somewhere in Universal's archives, and for many movie fans, it has become legendary, a piece of movie history that almost no one has ever seen. When Universal Pictures took on Jaws, they didn't just make a movie. They completely changed how movies were promoted and released. They spent $1.8 million on marketing, which was absolutely unheard of in 1975. Back then, summer wasn't considered a good time for big movies, but Universal saw something huge coming. 3 nights before the film opened in theaters, TV commercials aired during popular primetime shows. Each advertisement showed a shark rising from the deep water toward a woman swimming above, and underneath it all, John Williams' haunting music played. Those ads ran everywhere across the country. It was a complete media blitz unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. On June 20th, 1975, Jaws opened in 464 theaters across America, all on the same day. That wide release was a revolutionary new idea. Before Jaws, movies rolled out slowly, opening in a few cities, and then gradually expanding to more theaters over weeks or months. But this time, Universal made it feel like a national event, and it worked perfectly. The film made $7 million just in its opening weekend, which was enormous for 1975. Merchandise flooded the market everywhere. There were shark tooth necklaces, T-shirts, beach towels, and countless other items. Universal even worked with the book publisher to re-release Peter Benchley's original novel with the movie's poster on the cover, and that book alone sold millions of additional copies. This kind of all-out promotional push became the standard rule for big blockbuster movies after Jaws proved how successful it could be. Then came the incredible box office explosion that nobody had expected. In just 78 days, Jaws broke the box office record that had been set by The Godfather. It reached $260 million in the United States alone. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $1.5 billion in today's money. That's more than recent huge hits like Barbie or Top Gun. Maverick made in their entire runs. Jaws was the first film in history to hit $100 million in rental fees, which means the money that actually went back to studio, and it did that in only 59 days. Outside the United States, the film kept breaking records in every country where it played. It eventually brought in over $470 million worldwide, which was an absolutely incredible amount for the 1970s. The stock price of MCA, Universal's parent company, jumped 22% in just 1 month. The tie-in book sold over 5 million copies. This wasn't just a hit movie. It was a financial earthquake that shook the entire entertainment industry. Critics loved it too. Famous film critic Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4 stars and called it a terrifying thriller with real characters that you actually care about. The film received 4 Oscar nominations and won 3 of them: Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, and Best Sound. In 2007, the American Film Institute ranked Jaws as the 48th greatest American film of all time. But more importantly, Jaws changed the entire movie business forever. It created the idea of the summer blockbuster that we still see today. Before 1975, movie studios saved their biggest and most expensive films for winter release. After Jaws, that changed overnight. Big-budget summer movies became the new gold rush for Hollywood. Studios also started copying Jaws' release strategy, realizing that opening wide in hundreds of theaters while hitting television advertising hard could drive huge profits right from the start. That's how opening weekend became the most important part of a film's financial success. Steven Spielberg's career exploded after Jaws, but he didn't want to be trapped making similar movies forever. His next film was much riskier. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a story about aliens and human wonder instead of fear and death. Columbia Pictures was nervous because the budget had grown to $19.4 million, but when it came out in 1977, it made over $288 million worldwide. The cast of Jaws saw their lives change dramatically too. Roy Scheider, who played Chief Brody, became a major movie star. In 1976, he appeared in Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman. Then in 1979, he starred in All That Jazz, which earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. He returned for Jaws 2 in 1978, but it wasn't as well reviewed, though it still made $28 million worldwide. Richard Dreyfuss, who played Hooper, had an even bigger rise to fame. In 1977, he starred in The Goodbye Girl and won the Oscar for Best Actor. At 30 years old, he was the youngest person ever to win that award at the time. He followed that up with powerful performances in many other films and eventually appeared in over 90 movies and TV shows during his career. Robert Shaw, who played Quint, had a shorter but memorable path after Jaws. He starred in several successful films, including The Deep, which was based on another book by Peter Benchley, the same author who wrote Jaws. Sadly, Shaw died of a heart attack in 1978 while driving in Ireland. He was only 51 years old and had been in the middle of filming another movie. Despite all the challenges and conflicts during filming, the Jaws cast built lasting friendships that continue for decades. Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss stayed close friends, having dinner together regularly for years. When Scheider passed away in 2008, Dreyfuss gave a touching speech at his funeral. So what's the truth about that mysterious photograph and the scene that was too shocking for theaters? The reality is that Spielberg and his team pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable in movies, and they discovered that sometimes less is more. The scene they cut was brutal and realistic, but the version they kept was actually scarier because it left more to the imagination. That black and white photograph that surfaced in 2018 is real evidence of how far they were willing to go to terrify audiences. It shows us a moment in movie history when filmmakers were experimenting with just how much reality they could put on screen. The fact that people fainted and vomited when they saw the original version proves just how effective their special effects really were. But Spielberg made the right choice in cutting that scene. By hiding the shark and building suspense instead of showing graphic violence, he created something that has scared people for almost 50 years. The movie works because of what you don't see, not because of what you do see. That's the real lesson of Jaws. Sometimes the most powerful moments in movies come from what filmmakers choose to leave out, not what they choose to include. Your imagination is often scarier than anything that can be put on a movie screen. The next time you watch Jaws, remember that you're seeing a movie that was literally too scary for the original version. Remember that behind every scene is a story of young filmmakers pushing themselves to their limits, fighting broken equipment, dealing with impossible weather, and trying to create something that had never been done before. And remember that somewhere in Universal's archives, there's footage of scenes so intense that they've been locked away for almost 50 years. That's the real magic of movies, not just what you see, but what you know is out there, waiting to be discovered. If this story amazed you as much as it amazed me, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with your friends who love movie mysteries. Subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into Hollywood's biggest secrets. What other movie mysteries do you want us to investigate next? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.